is Omar, and I come from a country called Palestine. It's not yet recognized as a country. Hopefully one day it will be recognized. What identifies me in my life is, I would say, my family, being a brother to two sisters, and also my country, where I come from. The fact that I lived in Germany and Belgium and Palestine, I also got the benefits of the three cultures. I worked in a program called Program Change. The aim of the program was to publish the reality of a person who was forced to come to a country like Belgium and to apply for asylum. So the fact that the asylum seekers, they go to schools, so the target segment was between 12 and 18 years old. Sharing your experience and the reason why you came from your country, someone who lived a war or survived 3 wars in their life, when you just think of what forced this person to go through this way, although they know that many people died, like before 3 months, I know 8 Palestinians, they died in between Turkey and Greece, but this is from my country. In the boat, many people also died. I hope one day that when the students become old, they will be leaders and they might take decisions. Until now, I still have contacts with some students who I shared my story with, and actually I'm doing well in my life after I came here. I'm working hard, and they see my improvement, speaking their language and working with GRS. And the same time I do other stuff.
Bueno, soy Geraldine, tengo 38 años, vine hace 18 años de Ecuador. Tenía un poquito el camino allanado por mi madre, que había venido 2 años antes. Y bueno, pues igualmente con 18 años, pues la aventura era muy, muy grande, ¿no? Mi madre me llevó a Pueblos Unidos, que en principio era una reunión de mucha gente inmigrante que de varios países pues no tenían dónde quedarse un fin de semana o dónde tomarse un café, y pues varios estudiantes que estaban para ser sacerdotes también nos acompañaban, y pues se fue creando esto de Pueblos Unidos, y se hizo un grupo de jóvenes en el cual ahí me encontré, me hallé, y pues compartíamos, aparte de la parte religiosa, también era una parte pues social. Y luego esto creció mucho más y Pueblos Unidos se hizo pues una puerta de trabajo. Vamos a formar a la gente, ¿no? Creo que dentro de eso entraba el conocernos y el decirnos, bueno, pues no solamente es darles la taza de café, ¿no? Sino enseñarles también cómo se tiene que ganar esa taza de café. Pues incluyeron pues Pueblos Unidos dejó de ser la pequeña iglesia donde nos reuníamos para pasar a ser ese centro con cada uno, pues la oficina del director, la oficina donde ibas a aprender en los ordenadores, donde tenías que buscar, donde tenías que escribir. Hacer una llegada, ¿no? de la persona inmigrante y darle las herramientas pues yo estuve dentro de ello y pues me permitieron aprender allí. Yo no tenía un ordenador, pues allí iba y aprendía allí. Y luego pues Pueblos Unidos digamos que nos configuró la cabeza y pues hemos podido tener nuestras herramientas para salir adelante. Yo gracias a ellos pues estoy trabajando como auxiliar de enfermería. Sigo teniendo contacto, por supuesto, con ellos, con Alberto, que fue en su momento uno de los chicos que estaba estudiando para sacerdote y creó el grupo de jóvenes y las camisetas de Pueblos Unidos, y pues con los cuales he crecido, madurado, ¿no? Te puedo decir que a día de hoy pues son un gran referente para nosotros a todos los niveles, ¿no? Y pues seguimos ahí trabajando y colaborando en lo que se puede.
Creating a culture of hospitality and inclusion will look very different in various parts of the world. Each country has specific history and circumstances, and each Jesuit school will be able to express hospitality and inclusion for refugees in its own way. The goal is not to do the same thing in every place, but rather to respond prayerfully from the heart of each institution. Imagine our worldwide Jesuit higher education network a few years from now, focused together on the needs of refugees and migrants through our research, teaching, advocacy, and campus spiritual life. Imagine what it would mean to truly collaborate in fostering a gospel culture of hospitality and inclusion. We look forward as a task force to learning about the work already occurring at the schools. There are so many expressions of solidarity with migrants and refugees taking place. Mapping these efforts will be an important first step. And we look forward to collaborating with you and the entire IAJU community to create a culture of hospitality and inclusion that will be life-changing for refugees, migrants, and all of us.
As many of you know, the Jesuit Refugee Service was established back in 1980 by the General of the Jesuits, Father Pedro Arrupe, in response to the crisis of Vietnamese refugees, the boat people displaced from Vietnam. And Pedro Arrupe, the General, called upon Jesuits around the world to try to bring at least, he said, some relief to such a tragic situation. This was the beginning of the Jesuit Refugee Service, JRS. The refugee problem has grown immensely since those days, back shortly after the Vietnam War. In the year of 2020, for example, there are over 82.4 million forcibly displaced people. 1 out of every 100 people on the face of the earth. 1% of the total human population has been displaced. This is larger than all of the major cities on the east coast of the United States combined. There is, of course, considerable resistance to admitting these migrants and displaced people. We have seen it in the United States with a ban on displaced people coming into the country by President Trump. President Biden is seeking to overcome this, but there is still sizable resistance in the United States, in France, in the United Kingdom, and Germany, a number of other places. The response to this question then of displaced people and migrants is become a major priority for the Jesuits around the world. It's one of the apostolic preferences of the Society of Jesus. Preference 2 states the society and its institutions should be committed to walking with the poor, with the outcasts of the world, to those whose dignity has been violated. And they go on in the discussion of that priority to say that political leaders have kindled hatred and erected walls between the rich and poor, between those who are at home and those who are migrating.
We train people to create peaceful communities, to help their communities to live together. So that is what we want, to change the reality that there won't be any more refugees, but the best agents to do that with the highest motivations and the deepest, also at times very painful experience, but that motivates, drives, are refugees themselves to make a change.
People in situations of human mobility have been forced to resort to illegal organized crime networks, being subjected to discrimination by unscrupulous politicians, and even being used as bargaining chips in geopolitical conflicts.
Where do these people go to? Perception often from media is that they all go and want to go to Western Europe and the US, so the Western world. Almost 9 out of 10 people end up in a developing country, which usually is a neighboring country of where they left from. And also the situation, the socio-economic situation in those areas isn't necessarily very good. So when we think about the needs of the refugees, we immediately also think about the needs of their host communities. And we need to look at the two of them together, which is also part of the focus of the Global Compact on refugees that was developed a few years ago.
People are forced to move because there are wars or they find themselves in a war situation. there are also circumstances of violation of human rights, which also force people to move.
Now, of course, this is a very complex topic, and we, for instance, focus on areas such as reconciliation and peace building. We focus on mental health and psychosocial support, and then very important is also education.
One can look at the need to restore human dignity, because many of these people, they are forced to leave their homes or places of normal residence because of violation of human rights, violation of human dignity. Looking into the future, we see another phenomenon which I did not touch on, the issue of climate change or climate crisis. We nowadays talk of climate-induced displacement.
So I feel really inspired by Pope Francis, who is our neighbor here in Rome, and he urges us to kind of open our hearts and minds to the stranger, to the other, and also the action plan that he promoted it contains 4 verbs, and it starts with the verb welcome. So his action plan is welcome, protect, promote, and integrate forcibly displaced people. I think Jesuit universities can also provide service to people and organizations doing work with refugees, with sometimes very specific skills. It could be the development of a business plan for a project that focuses on livelihoods for refugees, because that's one of the other things. People, when they leave home, they lose their jobs, and it's very hard for them to find new employment. But that's a very complex area. So organizations like JRS, refugee organizations, can use support with market assessments, business plans, this sort of things, elaborating modules. Academics are really great to have on advisory boards, where we kind of need a whole variety of skills and experiences.
When it comes to all legal issues, documentation in some of the countries, certainly in South Africa, for example, documentation is probably one of the biggest problems that migrants and refugees have.
Another example of what universities could do is at the level of their students, probably advanced students who, in small groups as part of their education, could do group work with organizations. And that could go in the area of strengthening, for instance, communication around the issue. It could go into marketing advice, a marketing project, working on a campaign together with an organization. They could do data collection, data analysis, internships.
We are faced with a global, not just a global problem, but a huge global problem, and academia is one of those important sectors that could be part of the solution in this global problem of migration and refugees. But not only from the legal perspective, but also the ethical and moral formation of students that go through our universities.
En este viaje por prácticas de hospitalidad en universidades nos dimos cuenta de que existían 3 elementos fundamentales que necesariamente las caracterizaban. En primer lugar, la conexión evidente con la realidad de la movilidad humana. En segundo lugar, que eran prácticas transformadoras de la universidad o que abrían caminos para el cambio. En tercer lugar, que favorecían el encuentro, es decir, conectaban a la universidad bien con otros sectores apostólicos de la compañía o con la iglesia.
Luego que realizamos el mapeo y discernimiento de los programas de hospitalidad dentro de las universidades, hicimos varias reuniones con los distintos programas y proyectos que nos ayudaron a recopilar las diferentes prácticas y luego las fortalezas y debilidades de estas, y planteamos unos criterios. La segunda es que se encuentren integradas en la forma de ser de la universidad. Buenas prácticas que tocan uno de los 3 motores de la universidad: investigar, educar, transformar. Y finalmente, el criterio de involucrar a la comunidad universitaria. Los ejemplos incluyen clases de idiomas para refugiados, recaudación de fondos, recolección de alimentos, organización de discusiones o foros para atraer a otros agentes sociales a la mesa, actividades de voluntariado como parte de campañas de hospitalidad.
From the analysis of the best practices, we have identified 6 key elements that are essential to successfully contribute to a culture of hospitality. First, they respond to the call of the Church and the Society of Jesus to engage in human mobility. Second, they respond to a local context, meaning they analyze and answer to the needs of the community and that they depart from the prior work of the Society of Jesus in the territory. Third, they build alliances with other specialized institutions and building bridges with other apostolic priorities. Fourth, they take into account the input in the cycle of mission, accompany, serve, defend, raise awareness, and advocate, helping to develop a holistic approach of the best practices. Fifth, they are not merely understood as a service of the institution, but as a service to the community. And sixth, they are integrated in the apostolic planning of the institution, and therefore they have sufficient institutional support, human resources, and financial resources.
El impacto de la hospitalidad en nuestras vidas a través de 7 verbos. Actuar es servir a los migrantes, ponerlos en el centro y caminar junto con ellas y ellos. La actualización permanente de la visión y la misión en el campo de la movilidad humana. Innovar en diferentes áreas, en las formas de trabajo en red, en las nuevas narrativas, en los recursos, en los modelos de intervención que aplicamos. Construir cuerpo apostólico creando dinámicas de relaciones personales e institucionales al servicio de esta misión compartida. Abrir las puertas de la familia ignaciana a la hospitalidad, siendo más conscientes cada vez de su propia pluralidad, de la diversidad que hay en la hospitalidad y de la importancia de esa diversidad en nuestra casa común. Transformar la universidad, transformar nuestras conciencias y entrar en el corazón de nuestra casa común, propiciando el encuentro con las personas migrantes en tantos y diversos lugares. Redescubrir la importancia de la hospitalidad, de la acogida, de la integración en nuestra propia espiritualidad ignaciana y en el tesoro de los ejercicios espirituales.
La hospitalidad renueva nuestras instituciones, nuestras universidades, nuestras comunidades, ayudándonos a crecer en compromiso y generosidad. La Iglesia en general y la Compañía de Jesús en particular se benefician de este estilo de vida comunitaria no solo proporcionándonos credibilidad, sino también fomentando una mayor eficacia dentro de nuestra vida apostólica. San Ignacio de Loyola decía que la amistad con los pobres nos hace amigos de Dios. Las comunidades de hospitalidad abren nuevos caminos de revitalización de la vida en común, ofreciéndose como una invitación, como un soplo de aire fresco dentro de la Iglesia, como un anuncio de la buena noticia del Evangelio. Ante la cuestión de cómo ayudar a nuestras universidades a crecer en una cultura de la hospitalidad, respondemos desde este trabajo que sí que se puede crecer en una cultura de la hospitalidad. Un buen número de nuestras universidades así lo acreditan, aunque todos sabemos que el camino solo ha empezado. Esperamos que estos aportes sirvan como un adelanto para profundizar y desarrollar este trabajo en un futuro cercano.
We are interested in the role that Catholic colleges and universities should play in regard to migrants and refugees, an issue that Pope Francis described as the most pressing issue today. The premise of our research is that Catholic social teaching already give us guideposts to connect how we think, act, and what we do about social injustice, particularly with respect to migrants and refugees. Faith communities specifically play important roles in welcoming migrants into their new home societies, both globally and in the United States. And faith-based organizations contribute significantly to the global effort to resettle refugees. But we also know from previous research that there is a significant gap in attitudes between church leadership and laity, and that lay Catholics are not a monolithic voice when it comes to social issues.
In the basic models, Catholics are indistinguishable from most others. They are no more accepting of immigration than white evangelicals, and the most pro-immigration communities are those who belong to non-Christian religious traditions or report no religious affiliation. The other demographics work as we expected, such that the least accepting of more immigration are Republicans and ideological conservatives, while those with the most education are also the most accepting. There is one last interesting finding here. Among the least educated, Catholics are in fact more likely to support increased immigration, but that difference disappears for the most well-educated. The most educated Catholics are indistinguishable from other well-educated folks.
So, what does this mean? What are the implications of our research? Overall, Catholic institutions should consider reviving their activist roots. To challenge U.S. Catholics to reject anti-immigrant violence and xenophobia, they should really follow the examples of the Berrigan brothers to act institutionally as what Dan Berrigan called fugitives from injustice. In other words, Catholic higher education institutions need to become political on this issue and reclaim their role as hubs for social activism, to create the space and support for advocacy on behalf of migrants and refugees. Some of the things that Catholic higher education institutions should do specifically is to openly advocate for legal and policy support for migrants and refugees. They should welcome undocumented students. They should sponsor student visas and advocate for making it easier for migrants and refugees to receive them. They should consistently provide scholarships to migrants and refugees. And they should also offer accelerated programs and diploma equivalencies. They should also provide training and assistance with language and job training. They should support and partner with universities in the top refugees hosting countries, and generally, they should really push back against policies and social measures that marginalize migrants and refugees in education.
We hope that our experience will provide some insights into how Jesuit NGOs and institutions of higher education can partner to respond to the plight of migrants and refugees and contribute to the formation of men and women for others.
Each year, Jesuit Refugee Service serves more than 1 million people who have been forced to flee their homes in more than 55 countries around the world. Our mission is to accompany, serve, and advocate for displaced people, and we provide a range of emergency services, education and livelihood programs, protection programs, and peace and reconciliation initiatives. One of our priorities is the subject of the project we're introducing here. That is, providing mental health and psychosocial support for people who have been through the trauma of fleeing their homes. Partnerships with institutions of higher education have provided important support for our programs and in many ways have very much helped to strengthen these programs around the world. So many of these asylum seekers have been through and are still going through horrible experiences as they desperately seek safety. Mental health programs are critical to their well-being, and they can also play an important role in their efforts to make a legal case for asylum. The involvement of students and faculty from Boston College and Loyola University in Chicago will significantly strengthen the program's impact for asylum seekers, while also providing MSW students with an academic foundation and practical experience to advance their preparation for their careers.
This year will mark the 15th anniversary of a collaboration between several Jesuit universities, Loyola, the University or Universidad Iberoamericana of Mexico City and of Puebla, and more recently ITESO, the Jesuit University Guadalajara, and Jesuit Migrant Services of Mexico, and Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Chicago. While we assisted with the curriculum development and implementation and supported the local teams, we also learned a great deal ourselves through this collaboration. It provided us with a much fuller view of migration from a regional perspective. The faculty at our respective institutions provide academic accompaniment to the students while they complete their internships abroad. This two-way student exchange has continued for 15 years, and it has included approximately 300 students in a long-term migration-focused field placement abroad, providing humanitarian aid and social-emotional and psychoeducational support.
One of the things that we have started to recognize is that any project has to emerge from the needs that emerge or arise from the field. We are developing a curriculum that will prepare our students to serve the needs not only on the field, but also remotely, providing psychosocial services that can be run from different places. Our project is not unique. It's simply one example of some things that we have been doing along these months, but also it's a model, an example in a way of things that are possible to achieve when we are able to talk to one another, to collaborate.
The work of connecting Jesuit colleges and universities more intentionally to the needs of refugees is a direct response to the Society's universal apostolic preferences. It's a fundamental expression of Jesuit education to walk with the excluded. Practically speaking, this means including refugees among our students and teaching all students what it means to live in solidarity with those who have been forcibly displaced. The connection of Jesuit colleges and universities to refugees is profound. Father Arupe saw this when he founded the Jesuit Refugee Service, and we as a task force believe that his spirit is with the International Association of Jesuit Universities as we explore the next steps in God's invitation for us to act in solidarity and hope.